Welcome back. You're watching this special coverage on Prime Minister Narendra Modi's ongoing visit to Malaysia. It's day 2 of the visit. We're looking at different aspects and takeaways so far in this historic visit. India and Malaysia are strengthening people-to-people ties, with tourism emerging as a major bridge between the two nations. With easier travel, cultural connections and growing interest from Indian travellers, Malaysia is fast becoming one of the most preferred international destinations.
Iconic Petronas Twin Towers to the pristine beaches of Langkawi, Malaysia offers a vibrant mix of modern city life, natural beauty and rich cultural heritage. Indian tourists are increasingly drawn to the country for its affordability, diverse cuisine and short travel time.
India and Malaysia is a very high priority for both the governments. Keeping this in mind, the government of Malaysia has allowed Indian nationals to have a visa on arrival or a visa-free travel to Malaysia, starting with December of 2024. Now we are into the second year of operation. And on the other hand, Government of India has given the Malaysian citizens what we call e-visas, number one, in all sectors except, as you know, employment and students. But and secondly, e-tourism visa is gratis for Malaysian nationals.
Strong historical and cultural links, including a large Indian diaspora in Malaysia, make Indian visitors feel instantly at home. Travel operators report a steady rise in bookings from Indian cities across leisure and business segments.
The reason for choosing Malaysia is too safe for the Indians, and that connectivity with Malaysia is good, and the Indian cuisine is available easily, and there are too many Indians in Malaysia, so it's an easy holiday destination for us, and hope it continues like this.
Over here we have come with a group of around 110 packs, 110 or 115. They have a conference out here. It's a good place. We have been to Genting Island yesterday, and it was great. And now today we took them to the Batu Caves, and now for the lunch. It's going great. Yeah. A good place.
Improved air connectivity, simplified visa processes, and targeted tourism campaigns have further boosted travel between the two countries.
As India's outbound travel continues to grow, Malaysia is positioning itself as a welcoming, accessible and a very culturally rich tourism destination. With tourism ties deepening, we will definitely be able to see that this cooperation, both the countries have a lot to gain from. With camera person Jagmohan, this is Meghna Dev for DD India from Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia.
Ambassador Prabhu Dayal and Mr. Atula Neja continue to be with us. Ambassador Prabhu Dayal, just reflecting on the story that we just played, we'll be talking about the significance of diaspora and people-to-people linkages. Tourism also plays a very active role, perhaps introducing new generations to this shared heritage. And I also recall Prime Minister speaking about Roti Kanai and Malabar Parota in his diaspora address. Roti Kanai is very similar to, as we understand, Paratha and naan as we have it in India. So in that sense, a great degree of familiarity that forms a bedrock of this boom in tourism with friendly visa policies as well.
Well, certainly. There is a close cultural connect between the Indian diaspora in Malaysia and India. But let me also mention that Indian tourists comprise one of the largest groups anywhere in the world. India has lots and lots of tourists going out to other countries, and they go to places where there are facilities and where they are welcomed. Now, if you recall, till some years ago, very big groups of Indian tourists used to go to Turkey. But then Turkey's policies towards India became hostile. In fact, last year, after Operation Sindoor, Turkey adopted very unfriendly policies. In fact, they were openly supportive of Pakistan. In fact, they did things which went much beyond words. They gave weaponry to Pakistan. So naturally, there was a feeling of great anger among Indian tourists, and many groups cancelled their bookings. And they looked at other destinations. So, in this connection, if the bilateral relationship between India and Malaysia strengthens, if there is warmth exhibited by the leaders of the two sides, then naturally groups of tourists would be encouraged to travel from India to Malaysia. Now, of course, Malaysia realizes the economic power that Indian tourist groups have. They are so large, they are numerous, and that is why Malaysia has announced visa-free arrival, visa on arrival or visa-free arrival for Indian tourists, which is a very significant step. They want to welcome Indian tourists. And naturally, this welcome is because it would bring them financial gains. So, this gesture, I'm sure, will be reciprocated by India. India has opened up another consulate which will ease the visa issuing process. And particularly Indian origin people who live in Malaysia and who have strong cultural roots and connections with India would be very encouraged to travel to India. And they do already come to India in large numbers. But the idea is to make traveling between the two countries easier and free of hassles. And I think this is what the two governments are trying to do.
Okay. If I can go to Atul Aneja, I'll shift gears here. Atul, I wanted to ask something which I've been very curious about. How would China be looking at this visit of the Indian Prime Minister to an area which the Chinese perceive as their backyard?
Well, to be honest, having lived in China, I don't think the Chinese are going to be too perturbed about it. You know,
Okay.
because they have certain hard leverages over countries they engage with. You know, the very fact that trading and investments and, you know, they're very deep over there, and they also have a Chinese diaspora in these countries. So I do not see a reaction. Obviously, I mean, they're going to watch this carefully, but to be honest, it is not likely to emerge into some kind of contestation. I don't see it going that far. I think they'll just take it in their stride. I don't expect any particular kind of a reaction. I think Chinese have their own internal problems right now. I think they have to look at that rather than be too perturbed by all that. Of course, they're going to watch this as it happens. How they leverage it, how they turn it around, we don't know. You see, look, I look at Indian foreign policy. India as a whole is engaging everyone. To be honest, you know, before all this started with a visit to Russia. You know, you're engaging Eurasia, you're engaging Europe, you're engaging, finally the United States is coming to a trade deal. I will frankly not be surprised if we also open a tangent to China at some point, because that's what a poll is all about. It doesn't look at its shoulder at who's getting displeased and pleased. It looks at its own interests. And if the interests so demand that you have to engage with a country with which you did not have that greater relationship, you'll still go for it. That is a confident India. So it's just a thought I thought I'd add to your question.
Okay.
Ambassador Prabhu Dayal, in a similar wider context, I mean, there are more than one reason, of course, as we've been talking about the past couple of days, for a close friendship between India and Malaysia. But just as Amrit was exploring the China question, I want to understand the Donald Trump question. Since this regime has come into place, do you also see that there are many countries who've been also who are also looking to strengthen, reset their friendships, given they've sort of really discovered the importance of finding partners other than who traditionally represent one superpower of the world, but find friendships elsewhere, small countries, big countries, find opportunities in a sort of diverse, multipolar world instead of depending upon one power to take care of everyone?
Sure.
Well, you have a very valid point. Donald Trump has created upheaval all across the world. His invasion of Venezuela and the kidnapping of the president of that country, his threat to acquire Greenland, at times he even went to the extent that force is not ruled out, though later on he softened his positions during his address at Davos. And at the same time, the tariffs which he imposed on countries all across the world. These factors made other countries realize that it is important for them to have strategic autonomy, which is something which India has always emphasized. And more countries began to strengthen relations with India. In that context, the trade agreements, the free trade agreements which India signed with New Zealand, Australia, the European Union, Oman, and UAE, these are significant because they indicate that various countries are strengthening their outreach to India because they see a great deal of potential in a strengthened partnership with India, including, of course, an economic partnership. And that is where the outreach to Malaysia and the sort of interaction between the two leaders also comes in. Because our Prime Minister, on his part, has reached out to various other countries and has emphasized the role which India can play in promoting the strategic autonomy of those countries and lessening their dependence on any single country. So by engaging with India, countries begin to realize that there is a lot of benefit for them. India, of course, is such a huge market. The purchasing power of the Indian middle class is more than that of the entire group of citizens of different countries in Europe. So it's a very significant economic force, and that is why countries are responding to our Prime Minister's gestures by trying to see how the economic partnership is strengthened. Now, let me also mention that the sort of agenda which is shaped out for Prime Minister's visit is very carefully thought about. It is not a casual visit. These are visits which are full of content. They are rich in content. And there is a lot of bilateral planning which goes in. And India is very keen that the relationships with different countries are strengthened in a number of areas. But at the same time, the economic partnership should be very fundamentally important. Because, you know, when there is a strong bilateral economic relationship, other planks also begin to grow. So I think you have hit the nail on the head by emphasizing this aspect, and I just thought I should elaborate on it.
True. Atul, the Malaysia being a key country of the ASEAN grouping, an important country in the Southeast Asia, from an Indo-Pacific point of view, how important would this visit be? I mean, from the security perspective, from free and fair movement through the sea lanes, from capacity building of the Indo-Pacific area?
Amrit, I would like to look at the Indo-Pacific interest here in terms of India and Malaysia. Okay. You know, I don't want to spill it over to Quad and all that. It's essentially Malaysia's geographical location close to Malacca. You need safe waters here. Very, very important. Because the implications are huge otherwise in terms of not only your trade but international trade. So that's where you want to sort of look at this particular waters within the Indo-Pacific. And I think that's where the focus is. And not necessarily in terms of a larger grouping.
Okay.
So my take on on what is happening with Malaysia and capacity building within this region, which helps Malaysia. For example, Scorpion submarines. If India were to retrofit them or to overhaul them in India, that helps again the safeguarding of these waters, or Dornier or Sukhoi 30. So I think that this is a one element of the Indo-Pacific which Malaysia serves India's interests.
Given its strategic location, especially.
Given its strategic location. And you're also looking, you know, you can't look at ASEAN as a homogeneous kind of entity. You know, there are countries here like Myanmar, or you have Laos and Cambodia, also a part of ASEAN.
Right.
Why do you have the Singapores and the Malaysian? So I think Indian foreign policy is sort of, being very fine tuned to specifics and the fault lines within the ASEAN. And that's the beauty of the way our Act East policy is really evolving. That there are countries which are not necessarily on the coast, but for example, a country like Myanmar, hugely important after what's happened in Bangladesh. So you're having a different, why did you become the first responder when the earthquake took place in Myanmar in March last year? There's a reason for that. So you're engaging them differently. You're engaging Vietnam differently, right? Singapore is important from when we talked about the supply chains and the semiconductor manufacturing. So you're sort of differentiating here, and it's really interesting to watch how you're sort of matching horses for courses.
Okay. Ambassador Dayal, your take on this? What Atul is arguing that ASEAN may be a grouping, but it's not homogeneous. So the foreign policy has to, and this visit, you reach out individually to them and look at how you fine tune your foreign policy with respect to particular countries.
Well, Mr. Atul Aneja is absolutely right. You have to shape your policy towards any country in terms of the sort of bilateral factors. Now, in my remarks,
So we'll interrupt for a moment. Now we are bringing you the visuals of Prime Minister's meeting with CEOs of different Indian and Malaysian companies during his visit to Malaysia, day 2, which is ongoing. Prime Minister engaged with business leaders in Malaysia. Those are visuals of CEOs of prominent companies calling on Prime Minister Narendra Modi. This is day 2 of Prime Minister's visit. And Prime Minister's
in fact,
engagement with
coinciding with the Prime Minister's visit, Shubhendu, the 10th India-Malaysia CEO Forum was on. So the CEOs, there was an outcome document as well. So the CEOs later calling on Prime Minister Modi.
That's right. In his statement too, Prime Minister spoke about the significance of his meeting. In these particular visuals are of founder and CEO of Phison Electronics Corporation, Phua Keng Sang. That's the gentleman calling on Prime Minister Narendra Modi, founder and CEO of Phison Electronics Corporation. And Amrit, as you mentioned, the CEO's conference, an important part of a Prime Minister's visit to Malaysia, and Prime Minister saying that they've sort of, there are obvious...
Let's listen.
Mr. Modi, and to me it's a big impressive that he has a very big ambitions to build the semiconductor industry in India. And what we try to deliver to Prime Minister, we are not just going there to build factory, no. We like to transfer our technology, try to help train the talent in the local India to design the silicon, the firmware, software, and also the AI solutions. So maybe after a few more years, India will have your own ecosystem, own cluster owned by the India company, become your local India technology. Design, then produce India. This can really build the real technology owned by the Indian company.
Those visuals of Prime Minister engaging with Phison Electronics leader. It's a Taiwanese designer and manufacturer of chips and flash drives. So there, again, focus on the manner in which the semiconductor ecosystem, technology ecosystem appears to be strengthening as far as India-Malaysia partnership is concerned. Amrit?
Right. I'll let Ambassador Dayal come in. Sir, you were kindly complete your point. So
you're right in pointing out that all countries are important for India, and we develop our bilateral relations by strengthening the bonds, but at the same time trying to remove the irritants. Now, with Malaysia, there were some irritants, some difficulties in the relationship. For instance, there was the Pakistan factor, and under the earlier Prime Minister Mahathir Mohamad, relations with Pakistan were strengthened in such a way that they were impacting relations with India. He was openly supportive of, for instance, Pakistan's position on Kashmir. Now, what has happened is that some of these irritants are removed, but some still remain. And one of these is the case of Zakir Naik. Now, Prime Minister Modi discussed this matter with the Malaysian Prime Minister, and the leaders addressed the pending extradition issue of Zakir Naik. And of course, the Ministry of External Affairs has confirmed that India will continue to pursue the case until all technical and legal procedures for the extradition are completed. So significantly, Prime Minister was able to emphasize the fact that India's policy of no double standards, no compromise, and this is particularly with regard to terrorism. That is to say, when any terrorism issue is involved, we are not going to compromise. So this matter remains unresolved, but the two sides would be discussing it. So as I said, the effort is to strengthen the relationship and at the same time remove any irritants. And I'm sure we are doing it with other countries also. Now, as regards the China factor, you know, it is true, China will not react immediately. But the Chinese are very calculating people. They factor in, they analyze, they don't react very quickly. But China has consistently viewed India as a threat to their interest in the Indian Ocean region. China has tried to do everything which contains India's influence. For instance, by strengthening the relationship between the Chinese Navy and the navies of, for instance, Myanmar, Bangladesh, and Pakistan, and helping to build ports which can be used by the Chinese Navy. So, where Malaysia is concerned, of course, it is very much part of the backyard of China, or so China thinks, though Malaysia doesn't want to be considered that way. Malaysia feels that Chinese influence limits its own growth, and therefore Chinese influence needs to be contained. So therefore, in that sense, India and Malaysia have a certain commonality of interest. We do want to pursue policies which strengthen our bonds, and of course, if the Chinese are worried on account, it can't be helped.
Okay.
Mr. Aneja, you were earlier talking about capacity building. If we talk about capacity building in the domain of human resource, many partner countries have acknowledged the kind of expertise that India has in that domain. If I refer to the statement by Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim, he also speaks about recognition of Indian centers of excellence, how the education link is pivotal. There are also Tiruvalluvar Center and scholarships that have been announced. But in the greater perspective, how significant is this linkage between India and Malaysia, that of capacity building, the role that India in particular can do in this relationship?
Well, capacity building is definitely, Shubhendu, a very important area. When it comes to defense and security, I think that's another area of capacity building. Not only as we, service and upgrade the platforms which the Malaysians have, probably there'll be a Malaysian input within that as well, but also training in our basic academies. This has been going on for a long, for basic military training. We do also exercises with the Malaysians. So there is that element of training which goes on. That is on the defense and security side. Now, if you look at the semiconductor side,
yes,
in 2025, October 2025, there was this Advanced Semiconductor Academy of Malaysia and IIT Madras. Now, they signed a very interesting MOU, R&D collaboration on innovation, and second point is very important, talent cultivation. How do you build capacities? In fact, jointly do that in this framework, and of course, reducing reliance on US, China, Taiwan. I mean, this is a part of that understanding. So, capacity building is acquiring many domains. I mean, it's military, it's high tech, and I'm sure there are other areas as we go along in modernizing our economies and getting environment into it, and Industry 4.0. So there'll be these new areas which will come in for capacity building. To be honest, it will be a give and take, because there are certain areas where India will do more give than take, but there are certain areas of strength which Malaysians may have, which may also benefit Indians in
Is
upscaling,
semiconductors,
in skill development.
Atul, one of them? I mean, as in what I'm trying to understand is, what are our strengths when it comes to semiconductors?
Semiconductor is designing, which is the most difficult part. Fabrication. This is where our strengths will come in big time, and that's where the Indian talent will come in. Now, how do you sort of scale it up, Amrit? And that's where I think this Malaysia's this huge assemblies which they have created for assembly, testing, and packaging. I think that's where you do the R&D work, the brain part of it, to put it crudely, and you do the fabrication part of it. But the scaling up, you get a partner into Malaysia, at least for now, till we develop our own capacity. I think we are also taking a 360-degree view on developing semiconductor supply chains. But I think that is where the two, it's a very clean fit. When it comes to semiconductor. But then, when you talk about talent cultivation, this is a joint agreement between the Malaysians and the IIT Madras. Malaysians also want to now develop, as they go in the future, I'm sure they don't just want to do assembly and testing forever. So they would also like to develop their own industry. And that's where India comes in. You send your people to IIT Madras and you build talent, Malaysian talent inside India. And then, this is an ever-evolving process, Amrit. Later on, this whole model may shift to something else, but you're preparing for it right now. But basic thing is, you need the human skills, advanced human skills for that. And I think that's where we seem to be collaborating.
Okay. Ambassador Prabhu Dayal, if I can bring the same question to you with a note that in your rich experience in diplomacy, how have you seen the evolution of the perspective that the manner in which trained in India as a source of a trained workforce, skilled workforce, is a place which can train people in skills which are required in different parts of the world, especially with development partner countries?
Well, I noticed that Indians were respected highly in this context, and that is why many countries were using their services to extend the capabilities of their own nationals. So trained Indians were utilized by different countries as teachers, as other sorts of professionals who would help in lifting the standards of their own people. Now, let me also mention that the danger always is that when Indians who are highly qualified get attracted to other countries, and then many of them don't come back. This has happened with the United States and also a whole host of other countries. But nonetheless, even if, for instance, they become nationals of another country, they continue to serve as a bridge in this very important area of training other human beings and inculcating certain traditions, certain values. Nonetheless, we have this strength, this power, and this is being utilized as a soft power by India. And you will find more and more Indians being welcomed. For instance, in the Gulf, Indians are hugely welcomed because they are trained, they are qualified, and they're disciplined. And this contrasts very sharply with Pakistan. Pakistan had a very large workforce, but that is dwindling because neither is it so technically qualified, nor can it impart the sort of, training which Indian professionals can impart.
And Ambassador, may I just add, because we're talking about trained workforce, Prime Minister in his statement also highlights Startup Connect. I mean, India being home to the third largest startup ecosystem in the world. So it's not just workforce, but it's like new cooperations, innovators working together across international boundaries.
Yes, across all sectors. Whatever expertise we have, various other countries want us to share with them. And I think India has been very willing to help other countries in the advancement of their own technological capabilities. And this is a fact that has not gone unnoticed.
Okay. All right. My producer is telling me, my EP tells me that we have some more visuals of okay, all right, later. Business leaders met with the Prime Minister, but we are waiting those visuals. They are expected anytime soon. We'll play them out as we get. Ambassador Dayal, please go on.
No, I was only highlighting,
Okay. Yeah.
right?
Right.
That
Okay.
we
okay,
have been
right.
very willing to share our expertise in all areas where human advancement is concerned, including by helping other countries in a manner that they can uplift their own standards, whether it's in the area of digital expertise or other forms of education.
Right. Mr. Neja, in the context of these meetings that Prime Minister is having as we speak with CEOs and business leaders in different domains, technology in particular, how do we also read the significance in the backdrop of the major trade deals that India has successfully signed? The mother of all deals with EU, with United States is taking shape, and other countries it will come into play. As a business leader who's outside of India, what is your sense of the perception of India that they would have? I mean, India was always a large market, but it's now also becoming an attractive destination to invest and make your product, because if you do, then you get access to all these countries and regions where these breakthrough deals have taken place.
Great question, Shubhendu. I think it's evolving very, very fast. Because if you look at Make in India or Atmanirbhar Bharat, linked to the idea of Viksit Bharat ultimately. So you have a full vision in India. So India becomes a very attractive destination, not only in the conventional trade, which we talked about, but as an investment destination. And if you look at many of these CEOs and others whom the Prime Minister is meeting, and in fact, we had the gentleman from Taiwan who was already talking about it, that at one time I may have, sort of locate my factory in India itself. So that is something which is happening. The ground for that is prepared. Now, add to that what we had mentioned a while ago.
Atul, can I just, sure. Even while you speak, I'll just take a second. The visuals that we are playing out on the screens right now are of CEOs meeting with the Prime Minister, calling on the Prime Minister. Atul, please carry on.
Investments, if like the EU FTA which we have signed, there are two aspects to it which strike. One is, of course, what investments we are likely to get from the European Union, from defense onwards, Rafale, etc. I mean, there's a lot of investment coming in from there.
Great Prime Minister, he's made India economically more successful, more developed, and I'm very impressed with him. I feel this discussion with him, although it's short, but it's very meaningful and very warm. He come across as a very warm person, and I'm very impressed. So I will come and visit India very soon. Our group build luxury resort, like Four Seasons in Japan, in Iceland also. We're looking to build one in Iceland. And so I say we can consider to look at New Delhi, to look at Goa. And then we talk about one of the business that we are interested is in sanitary landfill waste management.
And those visuals, there's a bite, in fact, of one of the CEOs. Mr. Neja, the point that you were making, each of them not just greeting and meeting Prime Minister, but also exploring opportunities for perhaps business in India.
You look at that, Shubhendu, the gentleman who was just speaking, landfills, yes. Waste management. Now, if we want to upgrade Swachh Bharat into something bigger, these are the kind of investments we need. Modern technologies we need to come. And people are willing to look at it and invest in India. I think that's great. I was also making another point, Shubhendu, which was about our agreement with the European Union. There's a skilled labor mobility agreement. That pattern is changing. If there was a time we were rushing to the United States, but now European Union is coming into the play, and you're looking at a skill development or a skill partnership with Malaysia, for example. It's just as the world evolves to multipolarity, we are also finding various centers for skill development. It's getting reflected there as well.
Right.
So interesting developments.
Yes. Let me take that question to Ambassador Prabhu Dayal. Ambassador, the Prime Minister, referred to this, touched upon this in his address to the Indian community yesterday while the Malaysian Prime Minister was with him. He said, we are not just a market. Come to India not looking at us just as a market. We are growing by leaps and bounds. Come, grow with us, partner with us. That's one aspect. Investment, we are growing at the rate that we are growing at, and you can be a partner and take the benefit of it. But also the other aspect which both of you were talking about, Atul and you, about playing the role of trainers, of being partners in developing new technologies, leveraging your strengths and ours. Has all that changed now?
Well, the Prime Minister has always emphasized that he wants close strategic partnerships with different countries with which he engages, and that the relationships must go well beyond the buyer-seller relationship. Many countries tend to categorize a relationship in very transactional terms. President Trump is notorious for doing that. What's in it for me? That's not the way to look at things from the point of view of our Prime Minister. Our Prime Minister emphasizes that the two countries who engage in discussions and try to build a partnership must also try and see what is in it for the other party, because that is how a strategic partnership is built. And he has always tried to convey to the other parties that India is willing to share its expertise and build the relationship to levels way above a buyer-seller relationship. So this visit of Prime Minister to Malaysia and the warmth that existed between him and the Malaysian Prime Minister was an exhibition of the fact that the two sides have great respect for each other and are trying to build a relationship which is multifaceted and which is strategically very important for both.
Right.
And there, Mr. Neja, we are on standby for more visuals coming in of Prime Minister's meeting with
In fact, I'm told that the Prime Minister's meeting with the CEOs is over. Prime Minister is in the last leg of his, the last moments of his visit. The Prime Minister is expected to depart from Malaysia for India very soon, but we await those visuals right now.
Right. So as those visuals come in, and we're talking about capacity building, also the aspect of trade that we were talking about earlier. Mr. Neja, there was a reference to a local currency trade that the leaders made during their statements. What is the scope for it? How does it operate in international trade? What is the significance of two countries engaging in such a practice?
Shubhendu, I'd just like to comment a little bit before the discussion which was going on. I think we made India as the pharmacy of the world. Post-COVID, that was the mantra.
Right.
I think when it comes to skill development, I think we need to make India the skill development center of the world as a vision, as part of its part. That's one point. The second point, which the question which I've raised, Shubhendu, about trade in bilateral currencies. I think this is going to be very, very important. We are doing it with a number of countries now. And it's important that we carry forward this agreement with Malaysia as well, because again, it's part of the diversification. We continue to value the value of the dollar, but should that be the only game in town? Or as we are diversifying in other fields, should we not diversify in terms of currencies? And that's where trade in bilateral currencies come in. I think this is a natural transition which is going on globally, and it's not surprising that we do this with Malaysia, given now that the stakes of our relationship is going higher and higher.
Okay. Ambassador Dayal, I want to pick on a very important point which I found interesting, which Atul made, about that we could now become the skill developers or skill trainers of the world. Our IITs, our aims may not be the Ivy Leagues, may not be the MITs, but for the global South, we can become the skilled developers. In fact, I was in South Africa when the Prime Minister had gone for the G20, where he made that announcement of training professionals for the African continent, be it in health, be it in other areas.
You know, Mr. Aneja was right. There is a great deal of importance which needs to be attached to develop India as a skill development center of the world. But I think government is already working. Now, let me mention that while countries like the United States are closing their doors, they're making student visas more difficult to obtain and are, in a way, discouraging foreign students. India is welcoming them and India is opening its doors. There are a very large number of foreign students who are there in Indian educational institutions. India is giving a very large number of scholarships to foreign students. And the whole idea is to use the education bridge as something which strengthens the bilateral relationship between the two countries. So we are working on this very consistently, very strenuously. And more countries are beginning to realize that India has something to offer to them.
Or maybe our institutions, Ambassador, could open campuses abroad. As foreign universities want to come to India, our centers of excellence could open their campuses in these places.
Yes, you're right. There were, of course, lots of Indian schools in other countries. But now what we are witnessing is that institutions of higher learning, which are very well established in India, are opening their branches and their setups abroad. The IITs and the IIMs are very important in this regard. We see more and more campuses of renowned Indian institutions being opened, for instance, in the Gulf countries, and they are going to profit from this. Of course, these countries had to send most of their personnel, their students abroad for higher learning. But if these sort of facilities are available on their own soil, then they will be utilizing that. And of course, this will be something that will strengthen the relationship between India and all these countries.
And as far as the question of skilling goes, Mr. Aneja, would you say that India is also keeping pace with the needs of the time? There is a India AI Impact Summit that is also coming up this month, where different stakeholders, leaders, technology companies, and also a lot of youth who would be interested perhaps in exploring the opportunities available in the domain would be connecting. So Prime Minister does talk about that India could also become a home of AI and technology skilled youth. So it's not just skilling in the traditional sense of the word, but also in very cutting edge emerging technologies for the youth, for the professional to be comfortable and skilled in that. So their value in currency would increase significantly going to other countries as part of, say, professional mobility.
I completely agree with you that there is a consciousness and a conscious step taken by the government on promoting AI. I mean, semiconductor AI. I mean, it's all part of that particular mindset.
I was trying to recollect, sir. The budget talks about that in detail when it was being presented. Sir, please go on.
Exactly. So, Shubhendra, where my fears come in is actually downstreaming from concept to implementation stage. I mean, that's something we need to completely be focused on, that the big ideas finally get translated into concrete action and creation of those institutions. This is very, very important. Second thing is, we also need to scale up ourselves. If you're going to be the skill capital of the world, then we need to expand greatly internally as well. We need trainers to impart the training. So it's a full ecosystem which gets created. Amrit was talking about opening campuses abroad. Great idea. In Tanzania, we opened IIT, and I'm sure in some other countries as well. But we also need to create the full ecosystem. What happens? Let's say Ivy League university, if you're at Harvard or whatever, it is part of an ecosystem. Placements also come with that. You have big companies like Microsoft and other which recruit from these big institutions. So I think that element also need to, while we open campuses abroad, there should be a time when the people who pass out from these campuses are also absorbed in industry. And if there are big rising Indian industries over there, We do the recruitment for that for employment within India or elsewhere where we have branches. So I think it's skill development is part of a bigger ecosystem, and we need to look downstream it, and we need to look at all dimensions to develop it. That requires extreme focus, and I hope we can do that.
Okay.
And we're there on the screen playing visuals of the delegation level talks that took place earlier between Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim. Disaster management, sir, another area of engagement. Ambassador Prabhu Dayal, is a region which is affected by whether it's natural calamities, climate change and other such shared challenges. India and Malaysia also agree to cooperate in this domain of disaster management, an area where India, just like capacity building, has a unique achievement and institutions to help.
Yes, certainly. India has a lot to offer to other countries in terms of disaster management. We are a very large and diverse country, and we have to face various kinds of natural disasters. So we have been able to shape the skills and build the capacity to cope with these different kinds of disasters. And certainly, if we can share our expertise in any particular context with a friendly country, we will be very happy to do so. And I think this is the message that has gone across to Malaysia. As you mentioned, it is in a situation geographically where very often disasters happen, ecological disasters, and in terms of climate, etc. And if they can profit from our expertise and from our skills, then certainly they would like to do that. And India is more than willing to offer them expertise and to help them train their own personnel to meet these challenges. I think this is just another aspect of our outreach in terms of building an overall and broad-based strategic partnership. It is not confined to any one particular area, but it spreads across a whole host of areas and thus strengthens all aspects of the bilateral relationship.
Absolutely. Atul, as Ambassador Dayal is saying, that it's not just particular areas, not just trade and investment, not just defense and securities, but a comprehensive relationship. In fact, one development that happened during this visit is that Malaysia has completed all formalities for its accession to the Big Cat Alliance. Now that another area of cooperation where the two countries, given that they have a cat population in their littoral areas, and we've been initiators of this.
No, absolutely. This is a 360-degree relationship, and the Big Cat Alliance is a welcome step in that direction. It engages many people when you have an alliance like this. You remember when we had the cheetahs coming from Namibia and South Africa. I mean, the kind of buzz it created across the country. So Big Cat Alliance is, I would say, is part of a larger people's diplomacy as well. So I think it's a great idea to go for it. As is HADR, for example. When you have disaster relief and humanitarian assistance, look at what happened. I mean, I'm sure you recall 2015 Nepal earthquake. First responders reached there, came out of it, impacted huge amount of people. The goodwill it generates is enormous. I was in Myanmar just after the earthquake in 2024. And today, if you talk to the Myanmarese people, the goodwill for India and uppermost on their mind is that you were the first responder. You came to Mandalay when nobody else came. So this is a huge diplomatic tool as well. And I think when we talk about scaling up, this is another area to scale up our presence, to be the first responders, to reach out with our teams, NDRF and others. And because this goes beyond governments, the impact it has. It's really people to people kind of goodwill that it generates.
In that context of goodwill, Mr. Neja, healthcare sector, what India could achieve during the pandemic, that legacy, gets echoed time and again during such engagements.
I think that's the touch point. What we did in COVID has got sort of expanded in other areas as well. I think that's something which we need to sort of have as India's USP, as the pharmacy of the world, skill development, HADR, diaspora engagement. I think these are the tools which have come in, which are actually proving to be very, very effective, and that's why perhaps need even greater focus than before.
Okay. Ambassador, UPI linkages?
Well, UPI linkages are a part of our outreach to different countries, and we have strengthened these relations in the context of UPI and the linkage with their payment systems in a number of cases, and in the context of the Malaysian visit also, the Prime Minister emphasized this by the linking of the UPI will, he pointed out, be soon launched in Malaysia to
and the benefits it accrues, which both of you have been talking. I mean, students can pay their fee once various banks come on board, and this linkage, tourists can pay pay there. So, and it's been a successful model, which Prime Minister has been, wherever he's been going, he's saying we are ready to share our experience and learn from that. Though UPI did not take off in that sense in the so-called developed world. Ambassador?
Well, you know, as you mentioned, our student community and other professionals who are there would be greatly facilitated if there is fintech linkage. That is to say that if Indian UPI payment systems can be utilized for making payments in Malaysia, then naturally it will benefit our community a lot. And the Prime Minister has been at pains to build these linkages with a number of countries, including those in the Gulf and now Malaysia.
Ambassador Prabhu Dayal, last October, United Nations celebrated 80 years of its existence. In many of these statements, if we look at Prime Minister Modi's and other leaders' statements at such bilateral and multilateral forum, there is a line that we hear, the push for reform of multilateral global institutions. Nothing much happens over the years, but that statement is made. We see more and more countries supporting India's, for example, India's interest in achieving the rightful place in the Security Council, for instance. Now, as a pessimist, one would say that, you know, you keep saying it, nothing really changes. But from your experience in diplomacy, do these references, this small one push at a time, do they yield an impact eventually? I mean, does all of this count, is what I'm trying to ask.
Well, you know, there are major obstacles. As regards the issue of India getting its rightful place as a permanent member of the UN Security Council, the obstacles are the countries which are already permanent members. Now, China has been very resistant to the idea of India getting a permanent membership. And while some of the other P5 members have voiced their support, but I take it with a pinch of salt, because they know that Chinese objections will be so strong that China will veto India's case, and therefore they can voice their support, though it doesn't really amount to anything. The fact of the matter is that those who have that unique power, which comes from being a P5 member, don't want to share it with anybody else. Okay. It gives them a sort of role in global affairs which otherwise they would not have, because they alone can shape the course of various activities of the United Nations. So while India has a very justified and bona fide case, while many countries of the world do the right thing by supporting India's case for a P5 membership, the obstacles still remain in their place, and the UN is, as a result, incapable of handling global tensions and ending global conflicts. We have seen how the UN has stood helplessly by while these conflicts have raged on, and while India has come forward to give advice and assistance to the extent possible, it would have been able to do so much more had it also had the P5 membership or a permanent membership of the UN Security Council.
Mr. Aneja, I want to bring the same question to you. Just want to add that the post-World War world order has transformed for a long time, but even that certain comfort that countries obtain from having one superpower in the West taking care of the world, taking care of global peace and stability. That idea has also eroded significantly in the past 1 year or so. So in these changing circumstances, I come back to the point that do these push for reform of multilateral global institutions make sense?
Shubhendu, look at the United Nations Security Council's role. You had major conflicts going on. You had the Ukraine conflict, they can't do anything. You had the Gaza crisis, they could. So the whole sentiment now has come in that...
Mr. Neja, even as you speak, we just want to inform our viewers, we are listening to another CEO who met the Prime Minister.
What he wants India to be. So we spoke about how he'd like to build India, about building infrastructure, looking at innovation like technology, etc., and how we can collaborate further, not just in Khazanah, but also our portfolio companies. So we talked about that. And since 2014, there's been a lot of economic transformation. I think as far as Khazanah is concerned, I think we want to, India is a wonderful place. It has a high conviction market for investments, and we were even thinking of doubling our exposure, at least for the next 5 years. Yeah. I think when you actually look at the potential increase in the wealth of the country, I think what he spoke about was the need for the younger population, it's a very young country, to be able to connect the infrastructure, the living, etc., and having good jobs. Those are the things that I think we looked at and see how we can actually attract investments.
It's an interesting point the CEO makes. I don't know his name yet. I guess that information will follow.
But in the same line of engaging, investing.
He said, but one thing interesting that I found in what he said was that my decision to invest in India comes from the fact that it's got a very young population. It's one of the, India's got a young population, and the youth will give boost to it. Atul, would you want to come in on that, please?
Yeah, exactly. So, people across the world want to leverage India's demographic dividend. I think that's something which the CEO was reflecting. It's on our part that we impart enough skills to our young people to take advantage of this. The world wants to do it. And that's very clear. And this gentleman's, what he was saying, reflected that particular sentiment which you hear across the world. You have been traveling, Amrit, as Shubhendu. You know that this is one element which people talk about, especially in the arena of aging populations. If you talk about Japan or even China, they look at countries like India or Vietnam where there is this demographic dividend. So that's an interesting point he made. We should be able to leverage that. Can I come to the earlier point regarding the UN role? You see, UN's credibility has eroded so fundamentally now that it is not aligned to a multipolar world. It came into existence in a bipolar world where you have the US and then of course Soviet Union came in, then unipolar era. Multipolar world is not being reflected in the UN Security Council at all. And in fact, most surprisingly, it is Trump who mentioned something like a C5. Where if the reporting is correct, then it is Russia, India, China, Japan, and the US. He's talking something. It may be a new G7 or maybe a new UN which you're talking about. I have been to Russia recently, and people are talking of a Yalta 2.0. The Yalta conference was the one which got the United Nations structure into place. That we need a new Yalta where you don't have just those four, Churchill, Stalin, Roosevelt, etc., being present in that and defining what the world should be. That we need a 2.0 where we again come back to the drawing board and have a global organization which reflects the realities of today. I would agree with Ambassador Prabhu that the existing structure, the people who have stakes in it and are enjoying those stakes are not interested in that. But there are fissures within that. Now you can see things that are, even a Marco Rubio in a recent, not in recent, about 3 months ago in an interview, he too mentioned that the multipolar world, that the unipolar world is an abnormality, that we need a multipolar world. The problem then arises, again, the leadership of multipolar world? Should it be a US-led multipolarity or a China-led multipolarity or something else? So those are the issues which are really on the drawing board right now as we define new global organizations.
Okay. Ambassador Dayal, if I can bring you in, one agreement reached, the two leaders agreed on cooperation on transnational organized crime, through information sharing, through intelligence sharing. Given the fact that this organized crime has linkages, especially with terrorism, this is a significant development.
Yes, it's a significant development and one that needs to be stressed. India has emphasized that all countries must have zero tolerance towards terrorism. And in fact, it is important that the Malaysians are also realizing it, but we would like to see some concrete action. Now, the case of Zakir Naik is fundamentally important. He's linked to terrorism. He is linked to terrorist outfits. And he has been given safe sanctuary in Malaysia. India wants him extradited. And the Malaysians must show that they actually are with us in our fight against global
Ambassador,
terror.
we'll just interrupt you for a moment. More visuals of another CEO, a meeting calling on Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Those are visuals that we have been staying with for the past some time. Business leaders, CEOs meeting Prime Minister Narendra Modi.
So these are one-on-ones that the CEOs are having with the Prime Minister after the India-Malaysia CEOs Forum. So the visuals that you see on your screen are CEOs of various Malaysian companies calling on Prime Minister Modi and having a meeting with them. Some of them have spoken to us after the meeting with the Prime Ministers, sound bites of which we are playing for you as and when we get them. And sorry, Ambassador, we interrupted you because of those visuals coming in from Kuala Lumpur. Please carry on.
Being very straightforward with the Malaysians as regards our concerns about global terrorism and the networks which terrorist outfits have across borders. And we have said there should be zero tolerance. Now, in this particular context, I was mentioning that the case of Zakir Naik is important, that India has taken up this matter. We want him extradited. We want him to be punished because he has links with terrorist activities in India and terrorist outfits. Now, of course, the Ministry of External Affairs has said that these talks will be continued. We are not going to drop the matter. And the Malaysians will have to come forward and meet our concerns, because if they are saying that they are also united with us in the issue relating to global terrorism, then they must show that they actually mean what they say by acting on it. We want the extradition of Zakir Naik. And we are one of the countries which are affected greatly by certain aspects of terrorism. But then, other countries are beginning to realize that these terrorist outfits have global networks and they too are in danger. So the idea should be to end all sorts of terrorism so that the world is a safer place.
Okay. Let me bring Atul Aneja on this. Atul, extradition, supporting certain groups, etc. While we see nations make these statements saying zero tolerance towards terrorism, in fact, Pakistan itself would also say that, well, we are victims of terrorism and we have zero tolerance. But the decisions, hard decisions on that are often rooted in the domestic politics of those countries. Say, when Trudeau goes, their approach on the Khalistanis, the Canadian approach when Carney comes in, there is a slight difference. In the context of Malaysia, from Mahathir Mohamad to Anwar Ibrahim, give us a sense of what his politics is, where could he go on that front, because all said and done, he has to win elections in his country, and there is a constituency, for example, which says break the temples. These are, what is it called? These are not the places of worship or something, or not the approved places of worship. So there is a constituency of that in his own country.
Yeah, I mean, that's always the case. Now the question is, are you going to be a politician or are you going to be a statesman? I think that's where it will ultimately end up into. If you are just going to be a politician, you may go by the logic which you're saying. But I suppose there are also lobbies and pressure groups within Malaysia which would not be adverse to such an act. So I think he has to deliver on that. But the question also is from the Indian end that we need to pursue and persist with this. And to be honest, I've seen this happening in the Gulf, for example. You know, the number of people picked up by UAE and Saudi Arabia, especially Saudis, when they came for Umrah or Hajj, and then delivered to us it's been a big success. But why did it happen to be a success is that we persisted with it. We deployed all leverages of influence we had with these particular governments, and they delivered. So I'm not pessimistic about extradition of Zakir Naik from Malaysia. It may be difficult, but I think if we pursue, and on balance, if we can persuade we can persuade Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim that this is the way forward. I think it also sets, from their own point of view, from the Malaysians' point of view, the concept of moderate and progressive Islam is very, very important when it comes to Malaysia, when it comes to a country like Indonesia. And, the Prabowo or Anwar Ibrahim are leaders who can project that and, bring momentum and set an example to the rest of the countries which are reluctant to do so. So I think there is a bigger international element into this as well. And so therefore I'm not particularly pessimistic that this will not be delivered. And I do think that we need to persist, and most likely it's going to happen.
Yeah, we need to persist both at the bilateral level and at the multilateral level, be it at the UN or FATF, etc. And things, there are hiccups, but true.
Ambassador Prabhu Dayal, taking cue from an observation that Amrit made when the meetings between the CEOs and individual CEOs and Prime Minister was taking place, Amrit mentioned these are one-on-one meeting. Now, for a layperson to see, there appears to be a sort of hands-on style, a direct connect that Prime Minister appears to prefer, whether it is a world leader, a leader of a global institution, a business leader. We've seen last year big announcement coming in from Google, Amazon, Microsoft for investments, and each of these leaders had directly, personally engaged with the Prime Minister. From your experience, sir, would you say this is a sort of unique style that he follows of engaging with those key stakeholders directly in order to also ensure that the outcome is what one expects?
Well, you're absolutely right. This is a unique style. I've seen that our earlier prime ministers would meet one or two businessmen who were known to them. But this sort of a policy of reaching out to a whole section of the business community by participating in meetings like the India-Malaysia CEOs meet and having one-to-one interactions with leaders of the business community in the country he visits. This is unique to Prime Minister Modi, and as you said, this is a hands-on approach. I would even say this is a very strategic outreach in the economic and trade area, because the Prime Minister goes out of his way to give importance to these business leaders and make them realize that India is a place where they are welcome. Prime Minister Modi wants to give the message across that we want those business leaders to take part in the activities which India is pursuing in regard to strengthening our own industrial base. And the idea of Viksit Bharat is something that motivates Prime Minister's thinking, because India cannot go it alone. India needs partnership not just from countries, but from private entities. And in this context, business leaders can play an important role, and they are playing an increasingly important role.
Mr. Neja, just bringing the same point to you, sir. Given that these are very short meetings with the Prime Minister, but even 5 minutes of engagement directly with the Prime Minister may be far more impactful than year-long negotiations with nothing against bureaucrats, but but engaging with other stakeholders to directly speak to the leader, understand his vision, take in the confidence, and take the bold step, as many big company leaders have done in the past that I mentioned.
No, absolutely. I mean, this personal interaction helps immensely. I mean, it's got huge value. But I would like to add that this goes beyond this. I will not be surprised. You know, we have created platforms like Vibrant Gujarat, that many of the CEOs are then, there's a follow-up and they come and visit certain, exhibitions and meetings like Vibrant Gujarat, and, other states also do it now. We create, the idea is now we're creating platforms for follow-ups where the engagement can persist. Here, at this level, there would be a strategic idea which would be floated, but how to downstream it, I think that is again a part of the way the new India is moving, because you created the platforms now, you created the forums where these follow-ups and detailing, and the nitty-gritties of it in terms of negotiating land prices, where your ease of doing business comes in, all that is downstream. So I think that's why this style is working. Shubhendu,
you follow up on that, personalized meeting in an institutional manner. Shubhendu, I want to come in here and share a personal experience. I cover these visits of the Prime Minister, and often, speak to these business leaders after they have the meeting. My personal observation is, one, he meets a cross section of people. He'll meet influencers, he'll meet an INA veteran, he'll meet a business leader, he'll obviously meet the political leader he's gone to meet in that country. And when they come out and talk to us, they tell us that they'll share that he had a childlike curiosity on, say, space. Or if he meets a content creator, that how do you create content? And he'll give his own ideas. And they find that very interesting. They find those very short 5-minute meetings to be very interesting. And then what Atul says, later the institutional follow-up, and that adds
perhaps
to it.
That plays a key role in sort of face connect with the leaders. But that's all the time we had in this special coverage of Prime Minister's visit to Malaysia. Let me thank Ambassador Prabhu Dayal, Mr. Atul Aneja for joining us and patiently staying with us for all these hours and sharing their perspective. Appreciate your time.
Thank you so much. Real pleasure.
Thank you.
And with that, we conclude this special presentation. Prime Minister, in just a short bit from now, would be departing from Malaysia, concluding his 2-day visit with several outcomes as we've been talking about. Our coverage continues after a short break. Namaskar.